come out. Yeah, we know. They compromise.
Thank you.
Right. Wait.
In 1 minute, we're going to start the budget hearings. I need you to either be seated or exit, please. This McNabb thing for.
You can start it. It's fine. I mean, it's just.
Deputies, would you help us get a little order in the room? Those that are wanting to conversate, let's go ahead and get them to go outside. And those that are here for the meeting, let's go ahead and let them be seated. Okay. So the lady in the yellow shirt is causing problems. Okay. Thank you. If you're going to stay for the budget hearing, this is just going to last for a few minutes. Please have a seat. If you're not, then you're welcome to leave. So, okay. All right. Let's kind of give a little preface it into this afternoon. We are going to have our final hearing as of right now for the budget. Of course, you've seen it on the agenda today. And first of all, and I've said this over and over again, and I think this board has said it, and I totally agree with them. I'd like to thank the school board that's done a great job in bringing us a balanced budget. You guys worked hard. I got to watch it on YouTube. Didn't get a chance to come to it. There was standing room only, but did get a chance to see some of the events. And I know you guys made some tough decisions and applaud your decisions. But there seemed to be one thing that keeps coming out of these. You got the school board and you got the county commission. The school board does the budget. The school board's responsible for the budget. The school board's responsible to allocate where the funding goes. We don't want that responsibility. We don't. We want you to, that is yours by law. And we applaud you for having that, and we want you to cherish that. We're not here to tell you to do anything different. And I think the whole thing for us today is there's a misperception throughout the community and I just brought a few, but I've got more in the back if you'd like me to bring them. Plus I could send you, Patricia, you can probably help verify this, but there's literally probably hundreds of letters that we received during the month of last week of April through the first 2 weeks of May. Literally it's hundreds of letters that we received either on a postcard or via email or via phone calls about us and your budget. So I've got one objective here today, and that one objective is not to get in your way, not tell you what to do. That's not what it's about. Now, if I could have communicated it better, and I apologize if I did it wrong, Chairman. But what I want the general public to see is that we're on the same page, that we're singing out the same hymnal. Sunday morning, it's at church, and we're all singing Amazing Grace. Okay? That we're all on the same page. Because I think by those letters, there's probably, and you gentlemen probably can agree or disagree, but there's a lot of people that have the misperception is that we can do things to your budget on fine lines that we can't do. But I think our whole goal is to show that we are unity, that we are in support, and there's things that we can do together to help make our school system better. And I've said this from the beginning, I'll keep saying it, and I'll say it real quick because we've been here all day, you're welcome. To me, we've got to make sure that where we impact, the commission and the school board, where we impact and work together on is in the classrooms. The teachers, in my opinion, are the most important people that's in a school, by far. The most important people in a school. Those are the people that are making impacts on the future of our society, the county, the communities we live in, the churches we go to. Is the students is the future. And we've got to make sure that that's where, if we're making positive impact, it's got to be in those classrooms. And I'm still old-fashioned, think that the schools need a principal, assistant principals. They need the office staff to kind of keep things going. They need the lunchroom folks to keep meals prepared. They need the janitor service that keeps them clean, and they need the teachers in there to keep them to keep education going. But it will look different in each school. Understand that you can't use a cookie cutter approach for every school, but it'll look different. But I just want to make sure everybody knew that up front. The whole purpose is not got you. It's not about that. It's never been about that. But it's about us being on the same page and us talking through this budget to see where there's pressure points, so that this commission knows that there's pressure points in a specific area, that we can ask questions and say, just clarify this, okay? So that we have a better understanding of the budget. So please understand that that's the purpose. I know when me and Commissioner Smith, who's chair of the finance, when him and I talked about this before the announcement, because this was not, everybody says, y'all pulled it out at the last minute. Well, no, not really. We talked about how do we get everybody on the same page, because it is different. But I just think we've got to be on the same hymnal. So what I'd like to do, Dr. Robertson, you and Mary Ellen, if you would, there's some questions, and Chairman, I'll turn it over to you, Chair of Finance. If you've got anything you wanted to kind of lead off with.
That summed it up, sir. I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity, and as well as the superintendent, to address this body over any of the funding issues.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we turn it over to our Director of Schools, make just a couple of comments as Chairman of the School Board, if I may.
Yes, sir. Please do.
Joe Smith, 1700 Big Lake Lane in God's country, up in Nixon. Signal Mountain.
Thought it was Saudi because we had breakfast in Saudi Saturday.
Well,
Somewhere in between.
let me just begin by saying what we see a lot of times at our school board meetings, and somebody comes to the podium, they talk about how pleased they are to be here. I'm not pleased to be here. I'll just be real honest with you. I am honored to stand by my Director of Schools and the work he does and the work that our staff does. But I want to make sure I do this. I want to put feet to my statement, feet to your statement, when you say and when I say that these two bodies ought to be working together. And that's why I'm here. I want to make sure that I defend our school board. Many of them are here today. I won't ask them to stand because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But many of them are here, worked countless hours on this budget. I'm very proud of every one of them. And we didn't always agree. We had to duke it out quite a bit to get to where we got to. But I'm here to defend them. I'm here to defend our school system. And I'm here to defend our director of schools. Let me tell you something. This year in your budget process, you got a tough budget process. I know you do. But we can't be your straw argument this year. Maybe we have been some in the past, but we can't be this year. And if you run into problems with your county budget, it can't be blamed on the Hamilton County school system this year. I look across this desk, and every one of you guys, every one of you I've known for years, every one of you are my friends. Every one of you. And every one of you have supported my ministry to kids over the years. My commissioner, Commissioner Smith, still supports it today. Mr. Chairman, you supported it when you were in the private sector. But I'm insulted with the way this has been handled. In government, all the time, we throw this word around, transparency. Boy, that's a fancy word. We throw it around all the time. We do. We do. And we ought to have transparency. But guys, we held countless meetings. We did across the county. And I recall seeing very few of you, any of you there. Maybe one or two of you at a time, at sometimes. Transparency. Several meetings, we discussed budgets. As I recall, very few of you attended any of those. All you had to do was pick up the phone and call me or any of these other school board members for clarification. I will say this, Tucker McClendon, he was always there, or the mayor. They came to every meeting. So I appreciate the representation we had from the mayor's office in this process. Listen, in my 9 years serving on this is my 9th budget year, and it was by far the most difficult. We started with an $18 million funding gap. We had to make difficult, hard decisions, and because we knew it was a tough revenue year. Our superintendent would make recommendations to us and say, that's not enough. You got to go back. And he every time would go back and he did exactly what we asked him to do. So we could bring to you guys a balanced budget that's not asking the taxpayers for a dime. Public school budgeting is difficult. Now, some of you done it. I know Commissioner Highlander, Commissioner Baker, you guys have done it. Y'all know how hard it is. Y'all know how hard it is. It's hard. It's not like my budget at my house or your plumbing budget or budgeting for a big department store. It's not like that. It's hard. It's hard. And it's even more difficult today. Let me tell you, we live in a world today where seemingly there's no longer any moral absolutes. And we want to say kids are the same. No, they're not the same. Kids today are very, very difficult, very, very different than when you and I were growing difficult. You and I were growing up. And we'll have kids, hundreds of them, that leave school today. They go home. There's no daddy. There's no food in the fridge. Electricity's been turned off. Mom's bringing in boyfriends. They're going in the back bedroom. They're smoking weed. And then we expect that kid to get up in the morning, concentrate on algebra. It ain't going to happen. So what do? Well, we tell our teachers, all right, Miss Jones, algebra teacher, you have to be the parent. You got to be the police. You got to be the social worker. You got to be the counselor. And somewhere along the line, they might get to teach just a little bit. let me try to land this plane. These two bodies working together. These two bodies working together. What if? Just imagine with me for a minute. There's 11 of you. There's 11 of us. I don't know, this room a while ago was full. There's probably 250 people in here. What if every one of us picked one kid, just one family to love on, to encourage, to support, to hold accountable, to kick them in the hiding when they needed that? What if we all did that? Maybe we wouldn't be up here today even having this conversation. I'm 72 years old. I don't look that old, Gino. I'm 72. Next year, I will have served 10 years. I'm not going to run for school board again. And I'm not going to run for county commission like a lot of former school board members do. And Mr. Chairman, I'm sure not going to run for county mayor. But I'm going to keep serving kids, and I'm going to keep serving families. And I know you have some questions today, and you have a right to have your questions answered. You do. You just do. But man, it could have been so easily solved if when you'd have seen that budget, if you had a question, if you picked up the phone and called us, instead of going through this today. So I hope that as you talk to our superintendent and you ask him questions, that this don't become a political posturing event, and that today begins the day that these two bodies can understand one another and work together and do what's best for our kids. After all, we say that all the time. But sometimes people can't hear what we say because they see what we do. So I'll end with that, Mr. Chairman. I welcome my Director of Schools, Dr. Robertson.
Hey, Chairman Smith, before you go, before Dr. Robertson comes up, let me just say thank you for being here. I know it's not where you want to be. I know it's not the reason you want to be here, but you're still here. And you're always where you need to be. And we do appreciate that. And if I hadn't said it enough, I think every one of the people up here on this dais I've heard say how grateful they are to see a balanced budget. I don't know that I've heard criticism over the fact that the budget wasn't done in such a fashion. So I hate that it takes offense if there's some additional questions that had to be up here, but I've never heard anybody doubt the integrity and the work that the school board did. I know I certainly don't. So thank you again to you and the school board for everything that you've done for this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Robertson? Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a couple lights. Just a moment.
Thank
Let
you,
him go.
Chairman.
Dr. Highlander wants to go.
Chairman Joe Smith, I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate your heart. You've got a great heart, and I do appreciate it. It is my desire as chairman of the Education Committee to have those two groups work together. We had a meal plan. It didn't work out. We had some problems to getting it set up. I still hope to do that again. I will say this. I was in the very role that you were in. I served 2 terms there and 2 years as chairman. And it's a very difficult job that school board members have. And I see there's several things that I've had teachers come to me and say, can you not keep our experience increments and our steps? And I said, guys, I have no control over that. That's a school board realm. I'm out of my realm if I start trying to tell them how to spend it. And I don't think anyone here is trying to tell them how to spend it, tell you how to spend it. And I do want to thank you for one thing especially, though. I'd heard the rumor that you're going to run for mayor, and I'm glad that you dispelled that rumor. Thank you all for coming very much.
I see a few lights up here. Gentlemen, those of you that have your lights on, is it prior to Dr. Robertson speaking, or would you like to wait till after? All right. Dr. Robertson, please proceed.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, we've presented, so here to.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Robertson. I don't want to cut any of my colleagues off. Commissioner Beck, were you on, sir?
Chairman Smith, I'd like to say thank you for coming. And I did hear sort of coming out of your statements that passion for working with young people away from the school board in ministry. And you certainly are a man after my own heart, because I work with young people for many, many years. I won't say how long, I'll say something about my age. But when I first came to the county commission, there was this rift between the school board and the county commission. And the record will show that this commissioner brought both parties together. And we had this powwow, and all the cameras were there. And we made a commitment. We got off to a good start then. And we made a commitment that we would meet together at least quarterly and hear the concerns of the county commission and the school board. Now, over the years, that commitment has sort of faded. And I made the suggestion one time that we come back together since I've been back on the county commission. So I would still like to see that happen. And I think Commissioner tried to bring us together. And I hope that from now on, we will be coming together. But as far as our commitment and being supportive of the school system, we've always been there. This county commissioner has always been there. And I would hope that we would do that again. But the thing I want to say, and I'm trying to get to say, that I have the cell phone of your director of schools, and any question that I've ever had, I've always been able to call him. And if he didn't call me right back in 5 minutes, before supper time, he would call me back. And so I commend him for that transparency and that openness, the open door. He's always been that kind of a director. So thank you, and thank you, Chairman Joe.
Commissioner Graham, you had a comment?
Yes. I want to echo what Commissioner Beck just said. Every time I picked up the phone, whether it was the chairman of the school board or the superintendent or another school board member, they've always called me back. They've always answered my question. Never have we always agreed. I mean, it goes without saying. But I was elected to the county commission. You all were elected to the school board. I think you all have a very difficult job. And so this year, we in a flat budget, we asked you to bring us a balanced budget. We asked you to do your job, and we asked you to do a very difficult job, and you did it. And you did it without any fanfare. You did it until you got it right. Do we all agree on your budget? Maybe not. Do we all agree you did it right? I do. And for that, I want to say, and I've said this to my school board member in a public meeting, and I'm not saying anything that I haven't already said, but I want to say, I apologize to the school system, the school board, and the superintendent for dragging you all back into another budget hearing. You've already presented, you've already followed protocol, you've already done what we've asked you to do, and now we're doing this again. So I do have a phone, as Mr. Robertson knows, because I call him quite oftenly, and several of you. I do have a phone, and I have been getting my questions answered. I didn't call this time. I've returned calls, but I didn't call because I knew you had a difficult job to do, and you did it. And do I agree with everything? No. Will I always agree with everything? No. Would I do it differently? Sure, because I'm an independent kind of person. But we'd all do it a little differently, maybe. But hear me when I say, I respect your authority. I respect your constitutional authority that you swore an oath to the state of Tennessee. And I apologize if we've offended you or ruffled your feathers in any way. And Joe, I think your speech to Chairman Smith, I'm sorry, we are friends. Chairman Smith, your speech today, I think you went easy on us. I think you should have strapped on the gloves and knocked a few eyes out. But I greatly appreciate what you said today. I hear you, and I hear all the school board members, and I strive to work closer with mine and you all going forward. Thank you.
Good, sir. Chairman, do you have a comment before?
No.
Super
no,
speaks?
No, we'll go ahead and let the superintendent speak.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say. I want to make sure that that's not an official announcement, that Mr. Smith is not running for school board again. We still have some work to do there, so just want to put that on the record. Also want to recognize we do have over half of our board here, and I know the rest would have loved to make it, but it's middle of the week. But Ben Connor, Felice Haddon, Steve Slater, Gary Keene, and Larry Groen. So I think that having 6 of our board members here shows the process that we went through and the work that they put into it. And I think they would echo some of the statements that we all don't agree that this is the right budget or the best budget, but we put the work in and this board put the work in to bring a flat revenue budget and a balanced budget in what is a difficult year. So glad to answer any questions.
Chairman?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I'm glad you're here. I am. Last time we met on the 19th of May, there were a couple questions we asked, and of course, we got the 5-year thing, I guess, the week after. But there were some things on it that I had asked that didn't get answered to, and I sent the questions, and of course, they've been answered, but I still have some questions about those. So again, it's about seeking clarity. So I'll disagree with my colleague over here and tell you I'm glad you're here, because I think the general public, I think the citizens that are paying taxes wants to see us together asking questions and holding each other accountable for doing the right thing for the classrooms. So thank you for being here. The first thing on here is salaries. On this report from 2020, salaries up until the approved is up $78 million, which is 34.5%. Is there a breakdown that says, is that from new hires? Is that from teacher raises? Is that a combination of both? Because when I had my department store, we used to ask those questions annually. I had several stores that would ask it.
Sorry, sir. It's a combination of both. I mean, it is, we have, and you guys have approved our last few budgets. We've had in the past 3 budgets, the largest increase in teacher pay in a 3-year period since the school system consolidated in 1997. So you've got a big increase in pay. You also have where we've added more positions, and I did this in the presentation, but I'll go back 2 years ago when we decided, which many of you have said, and we agree with, the board agrees with, we should be pushing as many resources to schools as possible. And when you push resources to schools, the majority of the schools
When you
are
say
going,
resources, I don't mean to interrupt you.
money,
Okay.
money. We've sent, and we were calling it supplemental 2 years ago. We've been calling it strategic because supplemental sounded like it was not needed. We believe it is needed, but we've sent $39 million in strategic money straight to schools and given them the flexibility. As someone said earlier, everybody's different. We've got to be flexible. And the majority of that money does get invested into people, right? And so you've got large increase in pay and additional positions.
Okay. So are we going to be able to do the step increase this year? I guess, so that was not a part of the plan this year?
It's not in the budget that's presented to you.
Okay. So the $100,000 in bonuses that's on here, 5188, that is,
We use it for hard to staff positions to, we're competing with people around us. Well, we know that, we have a really hard time hiring positions like specifically school psychologists, exceptional ed teachers, high school math teachers. And so it's part of our differentiated comp that when we're trying to attract new people to the district, we're able to use that $100,000 for sign-on bonuses.
okay. And then I understand medical insurance. That was one of the questions too, because that's, the whole industry is upside down with medical coverage. I mean, that's everywhere. So I understand that. Other fringe benefits, that was almost $2.1 million. That's up 94% compared to last year.
I'll let Mary Ellen get this.
Yeah, as we continue to refine our budget, we were, so I think I explained it, it's for leave payouts that we kind of do at the end when they get their vacation leave, and we hadn't necessarily budgeted that, so we would want to make sure that was in the upfront budget. versus it was kind of in the salary lines separately. So we called that one out to have that specifically budgeted. So it's along with short-term disability and long-term disability, but those were pretty flat. So it was really the increase was putting $1 million aside to do the leave payouts.
Because that's pretty substantial.
Yeah,
just
and
an
it's, yeah, and
increase,
we have some
almost-
big, people, so we were losing some,
Are you
very
losing-
experienced folks, and sometimes those are, pretty big payouts when they get their leave payout.
Felice, can I ask you a question? And by the way, Felice and I talk multiple times a week about budget and so forth. If you get a second, can you come up? Just gotta ask you a quick question. The great thing about YouTube is like today, you can be sitting on the beach, drinking a cup of coffee and watching commission meeting.
Right.
Just a quick question for you. I asked you a question about salaries because that's one of the things that you and I kind of talked about. 'Cause I think we talked quite a bit. And ask you, was that salaries right? I mean, it's a huge jump. And understand the state, the involvement with what we did, when the state asked us to get to a certain point as far as starting salary, and we actually jumped ahead of time, which is perfect. I mean, that's good. You did some research, and I don't know if you got it finished yet or not. Maybe you kind of jumping the gun. Have you had a chance to look at where the salaries, where are they coming from? What's the pressure point seem to be what you looked at as far as salaries? Schools, central office, I guess I don't know what you call it. Somebody that works in schools that's really not assigned to the schools.
Yeah, like school-based or not
Yeah.
school-based. Well, I know the central office, of course, they have the highest salaries outside, I guess, of principals. And it's my opinion that, I think we have like 450 or more. It depends if you combine the school base, which is not really full employees. I think I've been cut off. And I just think I'm trying to look at just to compare where we've been to where we are now to see, I can call out, some positions and all that we didn't have before, but I would like to see what we had before and what we have now. And I just think my opinion is that we're expanding our roles beyond the scope of education. We're getting away from really focusing on educating our children. And it's like we're being all social workers. And I think I think they've been very beneficial in the school, but it seems like we're expanding that area and wanting to spend more time, with the families' lives, the children's lives outside of the school building and trying to do a lot of supports and connections and just spending a lot of time and resources on that. And I just think maybe that's a different entity in government's role other than the school system. So I feel like we're personally just getting outside of our role of really focusing on educating the kids and the academics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's just my opinion. But the salaries, it really looks pretty top heavy to me with the number of positions that we have. And one thing I saw, 100 of the positions at central office were like 80 grand plus, some at 80 grand. I just think we're top heavy. I
And
don't
that's
know if that
something-
answers your
Well,
question.
no, I think that's something we can't, now's not time. Because we got a budget started done, but that gives us fuel to look at next time that we do a
Mhm.
budget cycle, which is next year, and kind of look at it and kind of continue to deep dive. Because I think, again, I don't want to take anything away from what the school board did in their budgets, because I think you guys did a phenomenal job in pulling those numbers together. You don't have a whole lot of time to do it. You may think you do, but you really don't. And I think you did a great job pulling together, but we still, in the future, looks like we still have some things that you all need to discuss amongst your group to.
Yeah, I think it'll be an ongoing conversation. I feel like it was a big deal, what we did. And, Dr. Robertson and staff gave a lot of concessions over the time and we balanced the budget. But I think there's more work to do. And what I would like to do is see some numbers from just a few years ago, because the huge jumps were between 2022 and 2025, I think, as far as how everything went, increased, like salaries increased 78 million. So I would like to see what kind of positions we had before. And I know many of the ones we added are useful and good positions, but just seeing what we had, what we can work with, and do we need a lot of the new positions that have been added? But I can't really compare if I don't see the list of positions, that we had previously. So.
Yeah, because when I sit back and look at it, our school population growth, if you look at the last 20 years, it's kind of like a plus or minus about 3% on an average. There may be a one-off in there somewhere, but the county's population has continued to grow. So that means we're either bringing in people that don't have families, or maybe we're losing some folks to private institutions and private schools that we need, or even homeschools that we need to make sure that we're, I don't say we're attracting, but maybe we have a system set up to where we're trying to get as many people in the public school system. I come from a public school system. My kids were raised in a public school system. And I think it's important, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of my kids, Central High School grads and so forth. So, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear here. I think that it's inappropriate to call a single board member up to ask their opinion. Once the board approves the budget, according to state law, he's the only person that speaks for the board about the budget. So I respect Ms. Haddon. Ms. Haddon was a huge proponent and acted her part in getting this budget ready. But you've got other board members sitting out here not to ask their opinion of what's happening is number one, by what state law says not appropriate. Number two, by what you said you wanted to do of creating our.
It is, because she's my board.
I understand, but
She's
this is a
district
public
elect.
meeting that you're asking her opinion about
she's a-
something that's not even, that you're not asking for facts.
All right, so
If
what's your opinion of the same thing?
Yeah, my opinion of the same thing is that our central office is less than 8% of our total staff, which is under the national average. We invested in the well-being of our kids. We invested in more social workers. We invested in more counselors. We invested in more student support coaches, because of what Chairman Smith said in the opening, is that kids are not the same as they were 20 years ago, and that they need additional supports. What research will show you, you can go look it up coming out of the pandemic, is that school districts that invested in the well-being of kids and learning loss, not just learning loss, are actually outperforming districts that just invested in learning loss. What I also know about this district, been here since 2008. You were on the school board. You were on the school board. We can look at data from across those years. We are doing better in almost every category now than we were at any point since 1997. So the idea that money is going somewhere that's not being effective is just not accurate. Of course, central office positions are getting paid more than school-based positions for a number of reasons. One being our teachers work a 201-day contract. Central office employees work a 260-day contract. As in any industry, at Walmart, for example, an employee at a store is not making what the CEO of Walmart makes. It's not even comparable, right? And so we sit here and we talk about this as if like it's central office against school-based employees. And I've had to do a ton of work over the last month because everybody thinks central office is me, and it's not. Central office is our plumber. In that number of 380 something positions, our plumbers are in that number of 380 positions. It's a bookkeeper that isn't making what I make, that's sitting there and has heard for 2 months, just cut central office, just cut central office. Central office, that the morale around central office, they feel less than now. And so I've had to go back and repair all that work. And when you say that you want us to come here so we can start working, I thought this meeting was going in that direction. And then,
Then I asked that question.
exactly.
Okay. Appreciate it. Appreciate your comment. The lease payments were explained, so thank you for the lease payments. Other contracted services, what does that fall under? Because that's almost $12 million. Would you like to make that? Because that was one of the ones that I'd asked on the 19th that we didn't get an answer to.
Yeah, to make sure I got my facts, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So the grounds contract, so it was part of custodial, and then we broke it out separately. So custodial was its own line. So that did add a piece that was separate. Our substitute is probably the biggest line item there. So we contract out for substitutes, many, many years ago. They were our employees, but we contract with somebody.
Substitute teacher.
Substitute teachers, yes. Our copier usage, sports medicine contract that supports our students out on the field, magnet school contracts, parking lot rentals, so you have lots of little things in there, but those are the main things. And then also the funds, we have a set aside for the difference between the maintenance of effort revenue and our expected revenue. So we do think it will come in lower. So we set aside funds in the other contracted line. So if it comes in, then we'll be able to redirect it. But if not, it's something that we have not committed to a specific expense.
Okay, I've got one more question,
Okay.
and we'll end at that. When a student goes to a Future Ready or a Chat State sponsored class that Chat State's a part of, does Tennessee promise make a payment towards that student? Is it a payment?
There's a percentage that we can tap into to help pay for that. So anyone that's taking dual credit, there's a percentage. Now, all of our programs, it doesn't cover always the amount of classes. Like I'll take, for example, collegiate high. Those kids are graduating with a high school diploma and an associate's degree. It would not cover the entirety of what they're doing.
Where does that come in as on the budget?
But collegiate high parents are paying for some of it. So it wouldn't be in our budget.
But the school gets money.
No, I'm sorry,
But Tennessee Promise.
it goes through the student to the institution.
Okay, I guess I'm confused. So if somebody's going to Future Ready, Chat State, Harrison Bay.
Well,
Vocational
future readies are different than dual credit. If you're just talking about dual credit, that's where we can utilize, those scholarship dollars are for post-secondary
Right.
items, but all future readies aren't necessarily taking advantage of dual enrollment. Does that make sense? So our future
It
ready,
does.
we're funding that through our GP. So you would see that in our budget, which will show up in salaries. It's going to show up in our CTE programs. It'll show up some in transportation because we are transporting kids, for example, in Harrison Bay from Ooltewah, from Central, from East Hamilton, at North River, from Soddy Daisy, Sell Creek, and Hickson. So it'll be in multiple lines.
Okay, but, all right. Mr. Baker.
Thank you. Yeah, Joe, there are things called YouTube that you can watch board meetings with, and this guy was watching your board meetings on YouTube. And the best thing is if somebody's really boring and it's recorded, you can fast forward it. So this got its advantages. When we met, whatever day we met, we didn't have this, Mary Ellen. You put this together, and we also did this with the county. And frankly, the presentation, full well knowing, and I thought, back to the YouTube thing, I thought my Ben, not that the other Ben, but my Ben, not that you're not my Ben, but was masterful in getting you all to agree to have a balanced budget. So I thought that kind of set the tone to get the budget balanced. So, but then I did meet with one of the board members, I won't say who, and I said, please quit having the people call us just prior to that. Because we were getting emails, phone calls. It's like, I did 12 years in the school board. I never did that. We had that discussion, and, they can do whatever they want, but that kind of brings us in. In fact, one of your board members was here, and I asked him, I said, hey, do you want us in this business? You don't? I hope not. And the answer was no. But the point is, that kind of set a bad tone for us. And I wish we'd had that meeting, because I think the timing of that was good. In fact, that was the most recent, when Ben did that, motion to have a balanced budget. Our meeting, part of that, watching that meeting was to see what, what kind of mood we're gonna have when we all meet together, because we should do it. I used to do it. We haven't done it in a while. We also
I
need to
agree
do it with
with you. I
city
wish
council.
we'd had it. I know Chairman Smith called me and said, hey, we just need to postpone this thing. And that's how that meeting kind of got canceled, I know. Or actually it's postponed as far as I'm concerned. We can still have it.
That's two months ago. Be nice to have it. Anyway, we went through the same process with the mayor. It kind of had a dog and pony show. And it was like, come on, let's look at, so we've now got, I don't know, 8 years worth of data to look at. And I was just curious about a few things, because in the last, no, it's only 6 years. Budget's gone up by 162,440,000. And of that, about 23 million's healthcare. So the rest you were talking about, I guess, with the people you've added. I was curious about a category called stipends. It went from 3.9 million to 11.8 million. What's that, Mariel?
Your
You could
coaches,
answer.
your athletic coaches, we can cut those.
Oh, why'd they go up like 8 million?
Well, because you're adding sports, and it's not just stipends for sports, but we also started paying, which we should have been doing all along. Our band directors, our people that are leading, performances in school. So that's a big part of the stipends is majority for, I think, 6 million of it, 6.5 is athletic coaches.
That's interesting. I had no idea. I didn't know we weren't paying them back when I was on the school board. I mean, I always knew we paid like 2. We should have been paying like 5 at a team.
And there's some things, again, we've been revising processes. So there's some things that I think if you go back, we're just coded in regular salary. So we've been, again, trying to increase transparency.
Yeah.
So, some of it may have been things that weren't broken out before. I do think like athletic coaches is one of those that was not
So
necessarily.
it may have been somewhere else. It just
Yeah, it could have been
wasn't
somewhere else.
reflected.
And
Okay.
as well as the differentiated compensation for our staff schools that we've done. Again,
Yeah.
we've greatly increased our
Yeah.
teacher retention in our schools where we,
Yeah.
our kids have the most needs. So it's those combination of things.
Yeah, good. Thank you. That's just education. Yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of like Joe Graham said in that presentation, and I know that after talking to some of the other school board members that called me, they wanted to cut more. It's gonna be a tight year coming up this year, just, that was what Joe said last time. I think you heard it. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I hope it's not, but it could be. So thank you for being here. Joe?
Mr. Baker, you're my commissioner, and I'm not saying anything that I haven't said to you privately. But the reason y'all get phone calls, and you should get phone calls, because Tennessee is unique compared to most states, is that this board, as you know, does not have tax levying authority.
Yeah.
So you are a partner in this, even though you're not telling them how to allocate the funds, you are allocating funds. And so I've said this to you a number of times publicly. There has to be a conversation in this county, and it's been interesting all morning to sit here and look at this and listen to this plan Hamilton. It's a lot of these same conversations. It's not just about public schools in this community. Tax base is growing. You heard Haynes say a third, and a third. Our budget has grown. The biggest, what is the biggest percentage of that budget? It's state revenue. State revenue. It's not local revenue. It's coming from the state. This year, 17 million more than last year. It's all state money, right? And so when we have these meetings and the county commission comes together and the school board comes together, what has to be part of this conversation is revenue. We have to have that conversation in Hamilton County. I know it's a hard conversation. It's a hard conversation when you're talking about growth, hard conversation when you're talking about sewers, but we have to have a conversation in this community about how we plan on funding public education in a way that helps us move forward.
I hear you. I'm just saying 163 million over 5 years, a lot of money. A lot of money.
Because we were part of a lawsuit. I think it started maybe when you were on the board.
Or which one? Which lawsuit?
One where
Which
we
one?
were trying to sue the state over BEP.
Oh,
I know you were on the
Oh.
board. Why did we do that? It's because the state was not funding large urban
That was-
districts in the way that it should.
It was the Robin Hood principles, I recall.
TISA corrected that, right? And that's, almost 100 million of that money in 5 years is coming from the new state funding form.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Just a few questions.
Commissioner Shipley.
I'll be quick. Superintendent, thank you, Joe. Chairman, school board members, y'all did what you needed to do. You brought us a budget. Helped us. We didn't have to go no further. Thank y'all.
Commissioner Mackey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Chair, as all of us know here, the federal government has cut many programs and funding. And a lot of it's going to impact the public schools, like free and reduced lunch. For a kid to qualify, what percentage of the poverty level do they need to be under?
I'm going to ask Shannon Moody to come up and help with that. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Me neither. I wish my brain was that great. I can look it up for you back there. So if you have a second question and want to come back to this one, I can get you the exact number.
I think it's 130 million.
Well, look at you. So you're asking me a question, 130% of the poverty line?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Well, my question though leads into my question, which is, if you assume students are coming to school hungry and they have to qualify, their parents have to qualify that they are poor. And assuming that kid is hungry, did your budget take into consideration that these kids, they come from homes that oftentimes are not meeting their needs? And I'm curious, did this budget address that issue?
So overall, we've been addressing this issue for the last two budgets. And our commitment to every student belongs is exactly that. When we talk about also the belief that it's community responsibility, a lot of those investments are trying to make sure that kids have access to community resources. I thought you were going a different, 130% is like qualifying for SNAP benefits. And I think that may be the free routes. It may be a little bit different from that, but our budget takes into consideration there how do we put people in places that can help connect families to the resources that are available. Our budget does not take into account how are we sending food home on the weekends with kids. Does that make sense?
It does. If a teacher is at a school that has qualified, 90% of the kids are poor, and that teacher's job is predicated on making sure that kid can show progress from one grade level to the next, what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I would point to a couple of things that we have adjusted in the last, I keep saying the last two budgets because that's when if you remember, it's when we changed the staffing model. And the biggest thing that we've adjusted is in that staffing model where I talked about the strategic dollars earlier. Those follow the same pattern that TISA does, meaning it follows the needs of kids. So if you've got kids that are living in poverty, students with disabilities, English language learners, high concentration of poverty, those schools are getting more resources, more money to serve those kids, right? And so that's one way that we take it into account. Mary Ellen mentioned earlier the differentiated compensation. A lot of those schools are hard to staff schools. And so we put that diff comp in so that we're retaining teachers in those schools at a higher rate.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Highlander.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me go back to something that I've been questioned about. I will tell you, at your finance meetings, it was standing room only, and I'm short, and I went in the back and traveled incognito. I had on a pair of blue jeans and a polo, and I don't think anybody knew who I was. They thought I was some redneck dad, which is fine. But I did, like the chairman, I did listen on YouTube when I could not get there, but I tried to go and listen. I sat with Tucker on a couple of them, And let me urge all my fellow commissioners, whenever you can, go to those board meetings. And I think you were right, Joe or Chairman Smith, in calling off that meeting we had, but I do plan to have it again. At the time, we set that up to have a dinner meeting. We had dinner ordered. We had Champies ordered, Chairman, and for us to eat and have a meal. And we were looking at 200 people coming in or 300 coming in to get their impact on the budget. That was in addition to the fact it wasn't a budget hearing. It was a get acquainted session. The Central High School was having a performance on the other end of the building. And they called me and said, hey, our people, our grandparents won't be able to hear their grandchildren sing and play music for Christmas when we did that. So I do want to get that going again. We had a good meeting up Chester Frost a year or so ago, and I'd like to get that back going again on a regular basis.
Make sure it's clear. I didn't postpone that. Three of us.
The three of us did together. Yeah.
It wasn't made by Chairman Smith.
Right. Let me rephrase. It was in unison. It wasn't, we agreed that it was not appropriate at the time. Thank you.
I'll say that in the microphone to clarify, because I was called after that decision was made to help with communications, that was a joint decision between the commission and. To answer your question, 130 is free. I'm sorry, yeah, is below 130 is free, reduces between 130 and 185.
And you're making provisions for those students.
Yes. Or, as I said, those are the two examples I would say are the biggest ones of pointing to it. But again, not from a feeding them standpoint outside of school. Now, all those schools are serving breakfast, serving lunch, et cetera.
If I may finish, Chairman, just real briefly, just friends, I will say that I have tried to stay in communication with my school board member, Gary Keene, and with Ms. Haddon, who is close, and some of the others too. I've talked to some of them across the county, and I think most of the commissioners have. I've also tried to stay in touch with school board members, when other school board members, but in addition, also like their HCEA, I see Jeanette is here, Ms. Markill, and she has been really good for helping me get the heartbeat of the teachers and where they are. One thing I will say, I've had to tell at least 100 or 150 teachers, guys, I cannot say how the money's spent. I can only do what I can to get the money to you. A lot of the people still have the misunderstanding that we make the decisions on how the money's spent as the commissioners. We do not. I've explained that time and again, but we do the best we can to get money to you, and we should. That's our role. But it's the school board's role to decide how it's spent. The school board has one employee, and that's the gentleman standing right here. Am I correct, Dr. Robertson? He's the one employee that they have. And we don't have him, and you all don't have any others other than him. And I think people need to understand that. Thank you.
I want to say one thing for next year's budget. One thing I'm going to request is May the 19th was a whirlwind. And when we're given a presentation and this is the budget, you just can't. Even in my department store days, you just can't. For me, looking at a $2 billion budget, looking at, 20 different facilities, and then in those facilities, you're breaking down health and wellness and pharmacy and doctors, and you're breaking down fresh areas, bakery, all that stuff. You just can't break it down and dissect it in just a few hours. So what I'm going to request next year is that we get the opportunity, and I know, there's Lee. I'm going to request next year that we get the budgets and don't just get 3 days to look
I
at
think
it.
I'll jokingly say the same thing Marty Haynes said earlier. We posted after every single meeting, we were asked to post that version of the budget. We went through 3 versions. So after every single time the board met, if any change was made to the budget, we posted it online. I'll go back to what Marty said. If you give us the budget to print them, we'll print them and bring them over to y'all. But they were posted online from version 1 all the way to version 3 within 24 hours of them being presented to the board.
And I think the last, was the 8th? Is that when y'all voted on the budget? If I remember right.
May
it was the
8th. May 8th.
So.
Yes,
good
sir.
deal. But yeah, that's what I'd like. That way it creates conversation during the presentation and it creates from re-questioning. So, and I appreciate for any commissioner, if you don't have if you don't have a good relationship where you can pick up the phone and call your school board member, I will tell you, Felicia's done a fabulous job. And you know, there's, even on weekends, I'll call her up and ask her questions. I know she's probably like, she wants to hit the ignore button sometimes, but I would tell you, do spend time with your representative, because I tell you what, they're a key, vital part. And the public needs to know that. So one don't work for the other, but they got to work together. So. I think it's because your time's expired.
My life's not working. I don't call Slater up here and ask you some questions. No, I'm kidding.
I'd like to see that rule though, because I thought, you
Yeah, I'll
know,
send it to you. I mean, we got it the other day. And again, I'm not trying to like be confrontational here, but
Oh,
you're,
and
you're
either.
asking, you're asking an opinion of someone that, you know, we've got the data to show you, we've showed it to you and
didn't show it to me. You've
yes,
not
sir, I have.
No, you've not shown me a breakdown
Yes.
of where the dollars are. If you haven't.
It's been public since the day we presented it in version 1, Mr. Eversole.
Okay, you'll have to show me, because I've got it right here.
Happy to.
You show it to me. So as soon as we finish, please show it to me. It means I've missed it, so. All right, I don't see anything else. No other lights? You got something to say? Commissioner Sharp? Go ahead, Commissioner Sharp, I'm sorry.
I don't want to disturb anything here, ruffle feathers. I might, I usually do. I don't know how to say what I want to say really, but if, when, where we book a meeting with the school board, if we intend to do this regularly, which I hope we do, particularly in budget season, and when there's going to be 200 people there to talk about it. I think there's a lot of folks in our community that would like to express. I got a lot of emails. You know, I got some emails saying, you know, our central office is bloated. I got other emails saying, please raise my taxes so I can pay my so we can pay our teachers more. You know, and I think there's probably quite a bit of both of those sentiments surrounding our community. I respect our school board and the role that they play in devising a budget. And they chose to bring us a balanced budget. I know some folks wanted to cut more. I know some folks wanted to ask for more. But you know, just for the record, the commission can give more, but we've got to levy taxes to do that. And we can do that if there is the political will to do that. I do believe in order to go to the taxpayers and ask them to dig deeper into their pocket for more money, particularly in a time of financial uncertainty, we need to make sure our house is in order. And if our school board felt that we need to get our house in order, then I respect that. I would say still, as indicated by the fact that we're paying stipends now for teachers to coach after school is probably a pretty good indicator that teachers aren't being compensated at a level that allows them to spend their extra time coaching without compensation. Now, we've never really paid teachers an exorbitant amount of money. I don't think anybody goes into the teaching profession to get rich, but the cost of living has increased tremendously. And we've talked about how teacher pay or salaries have gone up $70 million, whatever, over the last however many years it's been. And yeah, that's a lot of money. And thankfully, pressure on the state helped lead them to change the funding formula for schools. But because the state changed their funding formula for schools doesn't mean that we should pull back on our obligation to fund schools as we have previously with growth money, whether it's how limited that is. It's different each year, but we have done that. I guess I say all this to say this is a multifaceted set of circumstances, and ultimately, I'd like to believe that cooler heads will prevail we sit down and have an honest conversation about it. If we agree to get uncomfortable with one another, if we agree to listen with an open mind to all of our constituents, whether they agree with us or not, and address this situation, because this conversation has been going on for a long time, probably since the beginning of time, and I don't think that it ever changes. But my hope is whatever happens, that we're able to really address this teacher compensation issue. No step raises this year. That's really hard for me to swallow. You know, it's really tough for me to swallow. I mean, that's for all accounts. I mean, we've had a lot of conversation about contracts in this room over the course of the last couple of years. I mean, when those teachers sign up, go to work with Hamilton County Schools, we agreed to pay them, and they know that step is there. They should be able to count on that. But I just tell you, you know, how far can you cut? I don't know. It's not my job to do, right? But at a certain point in time, like, we have to take seriously the conversation, as we talked earlier. How do we pay for these things? Is our revenue at the right? Is our levy at the right part? Do we need a different stream of revenue? What is it? And anybody that signed up for this job, you know, wanting it to be easy, you signed up for the wrong dadgum job. We got to have these conversations because it's meaningful for our community long term. We're only here for a short while, and I don't intend on sticking around here forever. We need to do the job at hand always. And if the cards are right, maybe something's there down the road. But oftentimes I fear we don't do that. I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but like, we got to have those conversations. And I hope that we start that sooner than later. You know, going into this next fiscal year. Chairman, thank you for the time.
Mr. Mackey?
Yes, Chairman. Chairman, whenever the commission and the school board finally have its meeting, I'm going to request that we have the meeting either at Chattanooga CSAS or Avondale Rec Center. It took me about a quarter of a tank of gas to drive up to Timbuktu, wherever that was. But can we have it in a more centralized location? CSAS or Avondale? No, it took, they don't have, you have to pump sunshine up there. But just, all I want to do is move it further to the center of the city.
No more questions? No more lights? Appreciate it. Have a good day. Thank you, sir.
Chair.
Justin.